We're ready to start 8.9. We're getting deep into this chapter. We are getting to some pretty high-level thinking here. Of all the strategies, I really like the quadratic formula the best, and that's our strategy for solving quadratic equations. And as you notice from my notes here, the quadratic formula, you can always use this strategy. If you find this to be the most, just easiest to understand, use it, okay? Let me kind of go back over these strategies one more time with you. Graphing, that was what we learned in 8.5. Sometimes that's effective. Sometimes we just can't get the trace button to give us the exact answer, or it's not on the table. We have to guess from the graph. And so we don't want to guess. We really want to know what is the exact answer. And graphing is sometimes a very effective tool, especially if when you graph it, it lands on an integer. That would be great. Factoring, not all quadratics are factorable, so that's only effective sometimes. The square root property, you can only sometimes use that. It only works if there's no bx term. And we know that some of the quadratics have a bx term. Completing the square, that was what we did in section 8.8. And, you know, it's pretty laborious. Some of you might have really have liked it. It's not my favorite, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't use it. It's always effective. You can get your answer always completing the square. Quadratic formula is my personal favorite. And I want to give you a couple tricks of the trade. Quadratic formula, this must be memorized, okay? You must memorize this formula, okay? So this is how I say it. I want you to say it out loud to yourself after I do it, okay? Let me demonstrate. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. And I just want you to keep writing it over and over and over again. Saying it, writing it. It's not going to get any more memorized if you avoid it. You've got to write it, say it, and keep repeating yourself, okay? So negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, I'm going to put all of that over 2a. That's the quadratic formula. That is what we call a typical Algebra 1 formula. So you know what? They're not going to give it to you on the state test. You have to come to the test already knowing that formula, okay? It has to already be memorized, so that's why I'm telling you to memorize that, all right? Let me demonstrate example 1 and just show you how simple it is, and I'm going to show you some basic tricks to follow. I hope that it will simplify things for you, and then I'll have you do a couple, okay? At least one. So let's start here. Letter A, you want to identify each of your variables. So A is 2, B is 3, C is negative 5. Now, when you use the quadratic formula, you must have all terms on the same side. You have to have your trinomial or binomial in descending order on one side or the other, and then whatever side it's not on must be 0. And so you see our trinomial here, and then there it's set equal to 0. That's what it's got to look like. In completing the square, we had to move C over to the other side and yada, yada, yada. A lot of moving going on. You don't need to do that. As long as your trinomial's on one side and 0's on the other side, you can go ahead and tell what A, B, and C are and then start plugging into your formula, okay? So A was already pretty much set up for us, which is great. We didn't have to do any rearranging. So the first place I would start in the formula is right here underneath the square root sign. That's what I would calculate first. And I don't know why your book does this. They explain what that is later on in an example. I'm going to go ahead and call it for you what it is. This is what we call in algebra the discriminant. And it is a very, very useful tool, okay? It'll tell you many things. I'll try not to steal too much thunder from the later examples, but that's where I would tell you to start, is calculate the discriminant and do that first. So b squared, that would be 3 squared minus 4 times a times c. Okay? So as you're typing that in your calculator, and definitely please have your calculator handy. This is going to help you kind of speed up, and I'm calculating it now as I'm talking to you on the video. Check how you plugged it in, and then press enter, and what is that number? And I got 49. Now, as long as that number is positive or 0, you can keep moving forward and solve the problem. If it's a negative number, you can't take the square root of a negative number. And so if we come across that situation, I'll try and show you what that looks like. Okay, so now we know what b squared minus 4ac is. We know what's underneath the square root. So it's going to make it really easy to plug in from here. We want to plug into the formula negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Okay, it's going to be real simple to plug in because we know this part already. We just calculated it. So negative b, we want to take the opposite of b. Well, b is positive 3. So the opposite of that would be negative 3. Plus or minus the square root of. Well, we already know what b squared minus 4ac is. We know it's 49. And we're going to divide that by 2 times a. 2 times 2 is 4. Okay? We're not quite done, but you know, it's getting better. Look at the number under the radical. Can you take the square root of that number? Is it possible to take the square root of 49? Yes, it is. And so we got negative 3 plus or minus 7 over 4. And so really it's up to us to decide, you know, what the numbers are. So this is how you're going to break it out. Okay, your first one is going to be negative 3 plus 7 over 4. And then your second one's going to be negative 3 minus 7 over 4. Okay, so let's start with this one right here. Negative 3 plus 7, that's positive 4. And then what's 4 over 4? 1. So there's one of your zeros right there. All right, so let's get to the next one. Negative 3 minus 7. That's negative 10 over 4, which if you reduce it, is just negative 5 over 2 or negative 2.5. So our two x-intercepts are going to crisscross at 1 and then again at negative 2.5. Those are our two answers. I really love the quadratic formula. I just don't feel like I have to spend as much room on my paper doing all this stuff. It doesn't seem as complicated to me as completing the square, but it might look complicated to you. So anyway, that's how you do that. I'm going to have to erase so I can show you letter B, but you don't erase. Just take out a sheet of, not construction paper, but notebook paper, and just continue with me so I can show you these things, okay? And continue challenging you. All right, so there you go. You don't erase. I will. I need the room. All right, so this one, remember I told you to get this problem started, we need the trinomial all by itself on one side, and then the opposite side needs to be 0. We do not have that situation. So we're going to take away 2x from each side. Okay, now we have 0, and now we have our trinomial in descending order. Okay, so that looks great. So A is 1, B is negative 2, C is negative 3. The reason why you want to have your trinomial all on one side is so you get the right sign. You're going to get the right number. Number's not going to change, but the sign could be different. If it's positive on the left, it's going to be negative on the right. So you need to have them all on one side so you can see what their actual signs are. Okay, what I would do is go ahead and find that discriminant, and let's just save that heartache right now because this is kind of hard to calculate. So b squared, so we're going to take negative 2, and we're going to square that, and then we're going to take away 4 times 1 times negative 3. Okay? So remember what we talked about in class, and I've emphasized this over and over to you. If you're squaring a number, just automatically put it in parentheses, and then you won't mess it up and key it in wrong and get the wrong number, etc. and so forth. So just try that. Now I just finished keying. I'll give you a chance to do it. And I want you to tell me what you got. Just write it on your paper. Did you get 16? Okay, well, because 16 is positive, that's a good thing. That means, ooh, this is solvable. We can actually take the square root of 16. We can take a square root of any positive number. It doesn't have to be a perfect square necessarily, but because it's positive, I know I can take the square root of it. I can take the square root of it and have two x-intercepts. All right, so now I'm ready to plug into the rest of it. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. I'm going to put all of that over 2a. Again, you see what I did? I'm practicing writing it. I'm trying not to look at the equation above. I'm trying to practice it and memorize it. And then it's there for me to check and make sure I did it right. Okay, I need negative b, the opposite of b. Well, b is negative 2, so I need the opposite of negative 2. That's positive 2. Plus or minus the square root of, well, I already calculated b squared minus 4ac. That number is 16. And then 2 times a, 2 times 1 is 2. Awesome. So, yes, the square root of 16 is a perfect square. You are correct. I hear your thoughts. So what I have here is 2 plus or minus 4, and we're going to divide that by 2. So let's break it up into two fractions. We're going to do 2 plus 4 over 2, and then we're going to do 2 minus 4 over 2. 2 plus 4 is 6, and 6 over 2 is 3. So yeah, one of my x-intercepts is 3. 2 minus 4 is negative 2, and negative 2 over positive 2 is negative 1. And there's my other x-intercept. Looks great. Now, if you get whole number or integer answers like that, what that tells you, just kind of like a little hint, trick of the trade, it was that trinomial was also factorable. So that's what that tells me, is it was factorable when you get integer answers like that. Okay? So letter C, it's all set up for you. I'm going to leave this one as extra credit. I showed you how to do this one. I'll make it a 2-pointer. And I showed you how to do it. Use your formula. Find your discriminant first, and then plug in everything else after you found the discriminant. And then I will check your answer tomorrow. So good luck on that.